Hello, and welcome to Sleepy Historian. You're here now, safe, still, and ready to drift into a story older than memory. Tonight we travel not with urgency, but with wonder. We won't rush through names and dates. We'll wander gently through time, following the footsteps of people who lived, dreamed, prayed, and endured. Let your body rest. Let your breath slow. You don't need to remember everything. Just feel the rhythm, the echoes, the quiet unfolding of history as it softly lulls you to sleep. This is your invitation to relax, to imagine, and to listen as the past speaks not with noise, but with calm. Now close your eyes and let's begin. You begin where time breathes slowly, a wide valley cradled between rivers, where the land holds stories older than words. The earth here is warm beneath your feet, soft with dust that has been walked upon for thousands of years. As you move forward, the wind whispers names not yet written, and the horizon blurs into dreamlike silhouettes of hills and stone. This is the ancient Near East, sometime around 2000 BCE, a time before kings, before borders, before even the name Israel is whispered into the wind. The rivers, the Euphrates and the Tigris, flow like long, shimmering thoughts through the landscape, feeding wild grass, fig trees, and early settlements. South of these rivers, in the land of Canaan, people gather in scattered hilltop villages, growing barley, tending sheep, shaping clay. They live by the rhythms of sun and season, sky and soil. You watch a woman kneel to bake flatbread over a hot stone. A child chases a goat. A man lifts his face to the stars, seeking patterns, seeking meaning. You are among the ancestors of a story not yet told. These people have no name for themselves that survives, but their world is full of quiet beginnings. From the highlands of Canaan to the riverbanks of Mesopotamia, culture flows like water, traded, borrowed, transformed. Words, gods, and tools move between villages like pollen. You hear echoes of Sumer, whispers of Akkad. But in these hills, something stirs that feels different, a slow awareness, like a dream that returns night after night. Nomads pass through the land, their caravans trailing dust like slow-moving clouds. Some come from the east, others from the south. They speak of distant gods and long journeys. They sleep under stars and bury their dead facing west, toward the setting sun. You walk with them not as a traveler, but as a witness. Their songs are soft. Their faith is simple. The land listens. Canaan is not a nation. It is a patchwork, dry plains and limestone ridges, forests in the north and desert in the south. Small city-states rise like islands, each ruled by its own chief or petty king. They build walls of mud brick and raise altars of stone. They dictate, fight, trade, and marry across borders. There is no unity here, only a mosaic of languages and gods, Baal, El, Asherah. Their names echo in temples and on tablets. Their stories carved in soft, sun-baked clay. Yet something quieter moves beneath the noise, something carried not on chariots but in memory. You follow a man walking alone through dry hills, his footsteps slow and steady. He is not yet famous, not yet a patriarch. He is simply one among many who feel a pull, a sense that the land means something more than what it holds. His name is still spoken in stories told by firelight. He will one day be called Abraham, but not yet, tonight. He watches the stars and wonders what it means to be promised something by a voice only he can hear. He wonders if his journey is for land or for belonging, or for something deeper still. You rest beside him. The wind is soft. The land seems to breathe with you. The people of this place know hardship. Droughts come without warning. Famine spreads like shadow. Empires rise in the distance, Egypt to the south, Babylon to the east, sometimes distant, sometimes reaching out with the long hand of war or tribute. But in Canaan, life remains mostly small, circular, quiet. You watch hands planting seeds. You see stones arranged to mark graves. You hear prayers spoken in languages now lost to time. The past here is not made of great moments, but of small ones, repeated over generations, like lullabies. And from these rhythms, the idea of a people will slowly form, not overnight, not with fanfare, but with longing. You notice something else. The land itself seems central to the people's sense of identity, not in the way of kings claiming territory, but in the way a person might feel rooted to a place they return to again and again in dreams. The hills are not grand, but they hold memory. The valleys are not lush, but they feel like home. And though many tribes will come and go, many names rise and fall, this sense of sacred space will remain. In the distance, a river bends like a question. You follow its curve through time. Bronze becomes iron, villages become towns, language begins to settle into script. You see the first early Hebrew, not yet what it will become, but forming like mist before rain. It appears in shards and fragments, scratched onto pottery, hidden in tombs. The people who write these marks are still finding their voice. But the land listens, and so do you. Everywhere, the boundaries of belief shift. Polytheism reigns, not as confusion, but as a tapestry. Yet within one family, one tribe, an idea emerges like a single flame, that perhaps the divine is not many, but one. It is not loud, but still, not distant, but near. You feel this thought before you hear it. It hums beneath the surface, like a root growing in darkness. And so the land becomes more than geography. It becomes promise, not just for crops or shelter, but for something spiritual. You feel it in the way people speak of home, not as a location, but as a kind of destiny. And yet this promise will not be simple. It will stretch over centuries, challenged again and again by war, exile, return. The land will be taken, given, divided, reclaimed. But for now, here in this first chapter of memory, it simply waits quietly. Like a breath held in, you lie down beside a hillside and close your eyes. The air is warm. Somewhere nearby, a shepherd hums a tune older than words. The stars continue to move in slow circles, marking the hours without haste. And in the soft darkness, you understand something. History does not begin with a shout. It begins with a whisper, not of conquest, but of belonging. Not of nations, but of names. Names that will echo for thousands of years. And one of those names, not yet spoken, will change everything. You feel the silence stretch forward, reaching toward a figure walking beneath the desert sky, a man who listens, who believes, who is willing to follow the stars into the unknown. ... You open your eyes to the sound of quiet steps in sand. The sky is vast above you, open and deep, like a thought that never ends. It is night, but not cold. The stars scatter in shimmering silence, their light older than memory. You are walking beside a man whose name is still simple, still soft on the tongue, Abram. He does not know what the journey will bring. He only knows he must walk, his feet pressed gently into the earth. Behind him, the great cities of Mesopotamia fade into the distance, places of brick towers and river gods, of ziggurats and crowded markets. Ahead only open land and whispered promise. You feel the space around him, a life of tents and quiet, prayers of flocks grazing under moons, of wells dug by hand and stories told beside embers. Abram walks not toward a destination, but toward a mystery. Something has called him, something unseen, something sacred. It is not a voice others hear, but to him it is clear. I will make of you a great nation, the voice had said, and through you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. You walk with him under that promise, feeling its weight and wonder. It is not a promise of riches or conquest. It is not about crowns or palaces. It is a promise of continuity, of being rooted not only in land, but in meaning. Abram carries it like a seed in his chest, small but waiting to bloom. Each morning he moves his camp forward. Each night he looks to the stars. The sky is his map, his temple, his reminder. There are no borders here, only belief. He is not young. His wife, Sarai, is also older than the season of beginnings. And yet they hope. They hope because they were asked to. You feel the tension in him. He is not certain, but he trusts. He asks questions about land, about descendants, about how such a promise could live in bodies growing old. But even his doubts are quiet, like ripples in still water. And then, one night, the voice returns, not loud, not frightening, just present. Look, toward the heavens, it says. Count the stars, if you can. So shall your offspring be. You lift your eyes with him, and the sky opens like a scroll. The stars pulse gently, like breaths. You cannot count them, but you don't need to. You feel the truth in them, not numerical, but spiritual. A lineage, not only of people, but of purpose. Abram builds an altar. He stacks stones one by one, simple and round, each one warmed by the sun. He offers gratitude, not because he has arrived, but because he believes he will. You rest beside the altar as the wind moves through low grass. This is not yet Israel. This is not yet a kingdom. It is just faith. But it is enough. Years pass slowly, like water through a narrow stream. The days blur into a rhythm, walking, praying, waiting. You grow older with him. You feel the weight of expectation and the ache of time. Sarai, too, waits. She is strong, sharp-eyed, and weary. Her hope, like his, is stretched thin across the years. And yet, something begins to shift. One day, under a tree, Abram is visited, not by a vision, but by 3 travelers, ordinary. At first, but strange in their calmness. They sit, they eat, they speak softly, and then they say, "By this time next year, your wife will bear a son." You feel Sarai's laughter, not joyful, but incredulous. She laughs from inside the tent, a sound born of long disappointment. But the laughter echoes. It ripples out and becomes a name, Isaac, meaning he will laugh. And suddenly, the promise is not just a voice. It has a face, a future. The story is not without struggle. There are detours into Egypt, moments of fear, times when Abram tries to take the promise into his own hands, to force what was meant to unfold slowly. You walk with him through those moments too, not judging, only understanding. Even great faith has shadows. And then the voice returns, once more, deeper now, almost solemn. Abram is renamed. Abraham, father of many. Sarai becomes Sarah, princess. These names are not just titles. They are transitions. The story enters a new season. The covenant is sealed not with ceremony, but with symbol, the ancient practice of circumcision, a mark not of conquest, but of connection, a reminder carried on the body that the story continues even when it feels forgotten. You feel the solemnity of it, the weight and the intimacy. This is not religion as rule, it is faith, as rhythm, as breath. And then, at last, the child comes, Isaac, born to laughter and tears. A soft cry in a desert tent, a heartbeat echoing a promise. You sit nearby, watching Sarah cradle him, her eyes full of wonder. The journey has not ended, but something has begun again. Still, even this joy will be tested. One day, Abraham is asked to place the child on an altar. Not metaphorically, literally. You feel his confusion, his dread. He walks up the mountain with Isaac, carrying wood and silence. You walk with them, slowly, breath held. You feel every step as a question, but in the final moment, the knife is stopped. A ram appears, caught in the thicket. The child lives. The promise holds, and something shifts again. Not in God, but in Abraham. He has passed through the fire of faith, and come out softer, humbler, quieter. He has learned that trust is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to walk through it as years pass. Abraham buries Sarah in a cave, a quiet grave in Hebron. Later, he will lie beside her. Isaac will grow, and his children will grow, and their children after them. But for now, you stay with Abraham in his final days, watching the wind move through tall grass, listening to the desert speak. The promise continues. It always does. Sometimes in silence, sometimes in song. You feel it moving like a current beneath history, slow, deep, and steady. And ahead, just beyond the veil of time, a people begin to take shape. Not yet a nation, not yet a kingdom, but a family learning how to listen, how to trust, and how to wander with purpose. You close your eyes beneath the same stars Abraham once counted. The sky has not changed. The story only deepens. And somewhere in the distance, another voice begins to stir. Not one of stars, but of shepherds and songs. And the first quiet rising of a king. You begin in a time between times, after the age of patriarchs, before the rise of kings. The land is familiar now. You know its hills and wells, its thorny fig trees and quiet valleys. The promise lingers in the air, but it has not yet become structure. The people, descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, now called Israelites, are many, but they are not one. They live as 12 tribes, scattered, linked by blood and memory, but not yet unified by government or law. Each tribe moves through its region, farming, herding, building homes of stone and mud. They gather at harvests and festivals. They remember the stories of Egypt, of the sea parting, of Sinai. But their unity is not daily. It is seasonal, sacred and soft. You walk through the book of Judges, not as a book of power, but of pattern. There is no single ruler. Instead, when danger arises, a leader, a judge, emerges. Not a king, not crowned, but someone who listens well. Someone brave enough to guide, if only for a moment. They are many. Some names echo gently in the silence. Deborah, who leads with wisdom under a palm tree. You sit beside her, hearing her speak to generals and commoners alike. She does not shout. Her authority is quiet, born of vision, then Gideon, threshing wheat in hiding, unsure of his strength until called. He doubts, tests, listens. You walk with him by night as he reduces his army to a handful, not by might, but by faith. And Samson, fierce and tragic, his strength hidden in his hair, his downfall whispered in the arms of betrayal. You feel the sorrow in his story, not of a hero, but of a man never fully known. Each judge rises, then fades. The land returns to peace, then forgets, and the cycle repeats. You feel the rhythm of it like waves against shore. Calm, then storm. Memory, then forgetting. The people begin to feel tired of the in-between. The world around them is changing. You see the Philistines rising on the coast. Iron weapons, tight cities, strong alliances. Other kingdoms take shape. Moab, Edom, Aram, each with kings, thrones, and banners. And so, one evening, by the light of a campfire, elders gather and speak. They do not speak in anger. Their voices are low, thoughtful, worn by dust and years. They do not want to abandon their faith, but they want structure, protection, a symbol. We want a king, they say, like the other nations. You hear the sadness in that sentence. Not because it is wrong, but because it signals a change, a shift from tribal memory to national ambition. They bring this desire to Samuel, the last and most faithful judge. He is old, cloaked in linen, eyes full of history. He walks slowly, listens long, prays often. When he hears the request, he is troubled. He reminds them, God is your king. But still, the people ask. They do not want to forget their God. They only want someone to stand before them, to unite them, to lead. And after prayer, Samuel relents, not joyfully, but honestly. You stand with him as he anoints the first king, Saul, a man tall and quiet, from the tribe of Benjamin. Saul does not seek glory. He hides when first chosen. He is strong, but unsure. His reign begins with grace, victories, celebrations, hope. But the weight of the crown grows heavy. You walk beside Saul as he struggles with pride, with patience, with obedience. He begins to listen to fear more than faith. His choices fray the covenant. The kingship begins to crack. Samuel grieves. You feel it in his bones. He visits Saul. Less, he weeps not for loss of power, but for the slow drift from purpose. And then, one day, he is sent again, this time to a small town called Bethlehem. You walk quietly with him, past flocks and orchards, to the house of Jesse. Sons are lined up, strong, tall, proud, but the voice speaks softly, not these. Then comes the youngest, David, a shepherd, with sun in his hair and calm in his eyes. He plays the lyre, he sings to sheep, he knows silence, he knows the rhythm of stone and sling. Samuel anoints him. In secret, oil glistens on his brow. He does not yet wear the crown, but you feel something shift. The story has turned a page. David enters Saul's court, first as a musician, then as a warrior. You watch him face Goliath, not with pride, but with presence. A boy with faith, standing before fear, a sling in hand, a prayer in heart. The stone flies, the giant falls. But this is not victory, not yet. This is only the beginning. David becomes beloved by people, by Saul's son Jonathan, by the songs of the land. Saul has slain his thousands. They sing, but David, his tens of thousands. And Saul feels it, the slipping of power. His jealousy grows. You watch it bloom like a slow illness, clouding his sight, twisting his thoughts. David flees. He hides in caves, in deserts, in foreign towns. He spares Saul's life more than once, refusing revenge. He waits, quietly, for the promise to unfold. On its own time. Years pass. Saul falls in battle. His sons die beside him. The crown, at last, is empty, and David returns, not with an army, but with a heart softened by suffering. The people welcome him. First Judah, then all Israel, the tribes, once scattered. Now speak as one. You stand with David as he enters Jerusalem, still young, still learning, but carrying something rare, a heart that listens. And now the land begins to hum with a new kind of rhythm. No longer just tents and tribes, but unity. Not empire, not yet, but home. And as the city lights flicker into evening, and the harp plays once more, you feel the whisper of something golden approaching, not just in rule, but in wisdom. A temple waits in the mind of a king, and the quiet rise of Israel continues. You begin in the hush after conflict, the pause between exhale and inhale, where peace finally rests its head. The land of Israel is unified, for now. The tribes have agreed. The enemies retreat to the margins. And in the heart of it all, in a city once taken with song and steel, a new chapter quietly begins. You are in Jerusalem, not as a battlefield, but as a promise fulfilled. The dust here settles slowly, and the morning light pours gently over limestone. Walls at the center is a man, young, newly crowned, not by violence, but by inheritance. His name is Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. He does not rush into war. He does not raise his voice. You see him walking slowly through the royal gardens, his fingers brushing olive leaves. He is thoughtful, his eyes deep as the wells of the hill country. And when asked what he desires, above all, wealth, victory, long life, he chooses wisdom. You feel that choice settle like cool water. It is a soft power, a strength not worn on the outside, and it becomes his gift. People say he can hear the heart of a dispute in a single word, that he understands not only what people say, but why they say it. You sit beside him as he listens to farmers, judges, elders. He writes poetry, collects proverbs, studies the movements of the stars. His rule is not without difficulty. No human rule is, but it begins with stillness, and in that stillness, a dream begins to take shape. David, his father, had once longed to build a house for the divine, not a palace, but a temple, a place where the presence of God could dwell among the people, not hidden on mountains, not distant in cloud, but near, tangible, real. But David's life had been too full of blood and battle. The task would pass to his son, and now, under Solomon's hand, that vision begins. You walk with the builders. Cedar is floated down from Lebanon, carried by sea, by river, by ox cart. Stone is cut far from the site, so that no iron tools ring through the sacred air. Everything is measured. Everything is quiet. 7 years pass in this work, not in haste, not in splendor for splendor's sake, but with reverence. The temple rises not as a monument, but as a meeting place between earth and sky, between longing and love. Walls are paneled with wood, floors are laid in gold. 2 great cherubim stretch their wings in silence above the inner sanctum. You step inside. The light is soft, filtered through narrow windows. Incense curls like breath. It smells of frankincense, of myrrh, of mystery. No idols sit here. No image of God is carved. Only an empty space, the Holy of Holies, where presence lives without shape. And in that space, the Ark of the Covenant is placed. The box that holds the tablets of Sinai, the staff of Aaron, the memory of manna. You feel the weight of memory, not heavy but deep. Solomon prays, not loudly, not with force, but with poetry. He asks not for dominance, but for mercy, that strangers who enter may be heard, that the people, when exiled, might be remembered, that God would dwell not only in heaven, but here, in this stillness. You watch as the temple is dedicated. Trumpets sound softly. The cloud fills the inner court, not storm, but a holy mist. The priests fall silent. The people listen. The wind hushes. It is the golden age. For a moment, brief, luminous, fragile, everything seems balanced. Solomon builds more than the temple. He builds cities, storehouses, palaces. He opens trade routes, welcomes foreign envoys. He writes the Song of Songs, the Book of Proverbs, the soft voice of Ecclesiastes. Wisdom becomes not only a personal gift, but a national identity. And yet you sense it. The balance is delicate. The gold multiplies. So do the wives, hundreds, from many lands, with many gods. The heart that once asked only for wisdom begins to stretch thin across too many alliances, not because Solomon forgets, but because the center cannot hold everything. You walk through his later years, and the songs turn quieter. Vanity of vanities, he writes. All is vanity. Not as despair, but as reflection, as the knowing that nothing, not even golden stillness, lasts forever. The temple remains, but cracks form, not in the walls, but in the people. Taxes rise, borders blur, memory fades. Still, for now, the glow lingers. You lie in the temple court as the day cools. The scent of cedar drifts on the breeze. Pilgrims come to pray. Children run in the shade. The ark rests in silence behind thick curtains. And the city dreams. Solomon will not rule forever. His wisdom, though great, cannot stop the slow unraveling of a kingdom split in two. But you are not there yet. You are here in the heart of golden stillness. In a moment when heaven and earth touched for just long enough to be remembered forever. You close your eyes, and somewhere, just beyond the stone walls, a quiet division begins to stir. One that no wisdom can stop. One that will echo with the soft footsteps of prophets and the fragile voices of kings. You begin this chapter on a ridge, looking out over to cities that were once one. Below you, Jerusalem rests in the highlands, its temple still shining, though the gold no longer glows as brightly. To the north, another city rises, Samaria, young and proud, its stones set with haste. Between them lies a scar, not of battle, but of decision. You are standing at the edge of a kingdom divided. It did not break with thunder. It cracked slowly, like clay drying in sun. After Solomon, the dream of unity faded. His son, Rehoboam, full of youth and fire, did not listen to old voices. He tightened the burden. He ruled with pride. The 10 northern tribes turned away. The old lines, once family, split like branches in the wind. The north became Israel. The south remained Judah. 2 kingdoms, 2 capitals, 2 centers of worship. One story, now torn in 2. You walk between them through dusty roads, vineyards, scattered altars. The names are familiar, but the spirit feels unsettled. Israel, in the north, becomes a place of speed and shift. Kings rise and fall like summer storms. Some reign for decades, others are gone in weeks. The capital moves. New shrines are built in Bethel and Dan. The temple is too far. The people grow restless. In Judah, things move slower. The line of David still rules from Jerusalem. The temple still holds the ark, but even here, shadows creep in. Foreign gods are welcomed into sacred places. Ritual becomes routine. The heart drifts. You sense it everywhere, a kind of forgetting, not sudden, but soft, like falling asleep. Under a sky you used to watch with wonder, and into this sleep, voices begin to rise. Not kings, not generals, but prophets. You sit by a fig tree and hear one speak. His name is Elijah. He is wild, sun-worn, eyes like coals. He walks alone, sleeps under trees, calls down fire from heaven. But his power is not rage, it is sorrow. He speaks not to condemn, but to awaken. How long will you waver between two opinions? He cries. If the Lord is God, follow him. You feel the silence that follows. The crowd stills. A king, Ahab, turns pale, but soon the noise returns, and Elijah walks back into the wilderness. Later comes Elisha, his student, quieter, more measured. He heals, feeds, blesses. He moves among the people, not above them. And others follow. Amos, a shepherd who dreams in poetry. Hosea, whose broken marriage becomes a mirror for a nation's betrayal. Micah, soft-spoken, fierce in truth. Their words are not easy, but they are not cruel. They speak of justice, not as punishment, but as balance. They speak of righteousness, not as rule, but as relationship. You hear them say again and again, remember who you are. Remember whose you are. In Israel, the kings grow wary. Prophets are exiled, mocked, silenced. But still they come, and far beyond the borders, a larger storm begins to gather. You hear the name Assyria whispered like thunder on the horizon. A mighty empire, sharp with iron and fire, sweeping through lands like wind through dry grass. City after city falls. Treaties fail. Walls crumble. Israel, proud and fragile, stands in the path. The final king of the north, Hoshea, tries to make peace. But it is too late. Assyria strikes. Samaria falls. The year is 722 BCE. Walk the empty streets. Doors hang open. Houses are silent. The 10 tribes are scattered, carried off into exile, never fully returned. They become memory, the lost. Tribes of Israel, the land does not forget, but it grieves. Judah watches from the south, shaken, but not yet broken. Some say the fall of Israel is a warning. Others do not listen, and so new prophets rise. You sit with Isaiah near the steps of the temple. His voice is low but unshakable. He speaks of both judgment and hope. He warns of pride, of injustice, of forgetting the poor. But he also dreams, aloud, of swords beaten into plowshares, of a child leading lions, of a shoot from the stump of Jesse, a future faint but luminous. You hear these words settle over the city like dust. Some believe, most carry on. Life continues, even in the shadow of warning. For a time, Judah stands strong. Good kings rise, Hezekiah, who prays while the Assyrians camp at the gates. Josiah, who finds an old scroll in the temple and weeps at the forgotten law. For brief seasons, the heart returns. Worship becomes more than ritual. But the tide turns again. Another empire grows in the east, Babylon, vast and golden. Its armies march with slow certainty. Its king, Nebuchadnezzar, does not bluff. He demands tribute, loyalty, silence. Judah resists, then submits, then rebels again. The prophets now speak in sharper tones. Jeremiah, young and trembling, weeps in alleyways. He is mocked, imprisoned, called traitor. Yet he continues, "Return, O Israel. I will give you shepherds after my own heart." The people do not return. In 586 BCE, the gates of Jerusalem fall. The temple, the one Solomon built, the one where heaven once touched earth, is burned. You stand in the ashes. The ark is gone. The walls are broken. The people are marched in chains toward a river far from home, and yet, in the silence that follows, something strange happens. The prophets do not stop. They do not say, "It is over." They say, "It is not the end." You feel that promise, faint like a flickering wick, even here among the ruins. They speak of return, of restoration, of hearts made new. They say the exile will not erase the story. And so you walk with the people not just away from a homeland, but deeper into memory, into longing, into something that feels like waiting. You are not at the end. You are at the threshold of exile. The wind carries the sound of weeping, but also, beneath it, the first slow heartbeat of hope. You awaken by a river that is not the Jordan. Its waters move slow and wide, shimmering in the heat of a foreign sun. This is Babylon, the city of hanging gardens and towering walls, a marvel to behold, but not your home. You sit beneath willow trees whose branches lean like sorrow into the current. Around you, the exiles of Judah gather in silence. Their clothes are travel-worn. Their faces are tired. Their hands carry no instruments. Where once they played songs of joy, now they hang their harps in the trees. Their voices crack with memory. By the rivers of Babylon they whisper, "We sat and wept when we remembered Zion." The words fall like leaves. You listen, still and soft, as the ache of dislocation takes root. Jerusalem is gone. The temple has burned. The gates have fallen. The ark is missing. What remains is only story, passed from mouth to mouth in the hush of dusk. You hear it spoken not with anger, but with wonder, as if to say, "How did we survive this? How did we carry what was lost?" The Babylonians do not erase the people, they displace them. They scatter the wise, the skilled, the scribes. They leave the poor to till the land. The people live not in chains, but in confusion. They are allowed to build homes, plant gardens, raise children, but their hearts live elsewhere. You feel it in every glance eastward, every paused breath before prayer. Home is no longer a place. It has become a longing, and yet, slowly, a new rhythm emerges. The exile does not end faith, it deepens it. Without temple or priesthood, worship becomes internal. Words become sacred. Stories become scripture. Memory becomes structure. You walk through a quiet house at dusk and see a father unrolling a scroll, a mother teaching her children the Shema. "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one." The words are no longer just tradition, they are identity. They hold a people together when geography cannot. The Sabbath becomes not only rest, but resistance, a way to say, "We are still here, we still remember." You feel that defiance in its gentleness. A meal shared, a candle lit, a prayer whispered. Among the exiles are poets and prophets, and their voices shape this time like wind shapes sand. You hear the voice of Ezekiel, who sits beside the Kebar Canal, his visions wild with flame and wheel, yet rooted in hope. He speaks of a valley of dry bones rising, of a heart of stone replaced by a heart of flesh. He does not deny the devastation, he names it, but he insists it is not the end. Then you turn and hear second Isaiah, unnamed but unmistakable, rising like morning light in the later years of exile. Comfort, comfort my people, he sings. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem. His words are not commands, but lullabies. He speaks of a servant who suffers silently, of a new exodus not across desert, but through time. He says the nations will see the light in Israel's restoration, that this story, broken as it seems, is still unfolding. You feel the people begin to lift their heads. They do not rush back to what was. They begin to imagine what could be. In Babylon, the first seeds of synagogue take root, not buildings at first, but gatherings, places where study becomes worship, where Torah becomes the center. You watch scribes ink careful letters onto parchment, shaping law into living memory. The scroll becomes sacred not because of what it is made of, but because it holds the soul of a people. The written word, portable and precise, becomes more powerful than walls. The exiles marry, they plant, they learn the language of their captors. Some rise to prominence, most notably Daniel, who walks carefully in the court of kings, interpreting dreams, praying quietly through political storms. His courage is not loud, it is rhythmic, steady. He bows toward Jerusalem 3 times a day, even as lions wait in the dark. Others, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, refuse to kneel before statues of gold, choosing flame over silence. Their stories echo through the exile like drums in the distance, not of rebellion, but of integrity. And then, one day, word spreads. Babylon has fallen. It happens not with chaos, but with clarity. A new king rises, Cyrus of Persia, and his tone is different. He is no liberator, but he is not cruel. He speaks of return, of rebuilding, of respect for gods, not his own. He issues a decree: the exiles may go home. You feel the hesitation. In the people home, the word trembles now. For some, it is memory. For others, it is myth. A generation has grown up in Babylon. The journey back is not only physical, it is emotional, spiritual, uncertain. Still, a remnant gathers. They pack what little they own. They lift children onto shoulders. They walk across sand and stone, across silence and song. They return, not to what was, but to what might be. You walk with them, not as a triumphant army, but as pilgrims. The road winds gently, the sun rises slowly, and ahead the ruins of Jerusalem come into view, not a city, but a possibility. You step through broken gates, past walls scorched by time. The temple is gone, but the foundation remains. The altar is rebuilt first. Prayers return to their proper place. And slowly, stone by stone, hope becomes architecture. Zerubbabel leads the rebuilding. Ezra brings the law. Nehemiah rebuilds the walls. The people read Torah aloud in the square, weeping not from sorrow, but from recognition. They are no longer lost. They are returning, not just to land, but to themselves. And yet exile never truly ends. It lingers in the bones, in the need to remember, in the prayers that always mention Jerusalem, no matter where the feet stand. You realize something. Exile has not broken the people. It has refined them. It has made memories stronger than stone, and stories stronger than sword. The temple may be smaller now, but the soul of the people has grown. You rest by the rebuilt wall at dusk. The wind is soft. Children laugh nearby. An old man prays facing the west, his lips moving slowly like waves. The city is not what it was, but it breathes again. And in the gentle hush, you hear not triumph, but return. Not conclusion, but continuation. For even as home is reclaimed, new empires loom on the edge. Persia, then Greece, then Rome. And history does not pause. But the people no longer fear forgetting. They have learned how to remember in exile. They have learned how to carry the sacred wherever they go. You close your eyes as night settles over Jerusalem once more, and in the distance you sense the rise of something new, a voice not yet heard, attention not yet spoken, a story waiting quietly in the space between the stones. You are walking through Jerusalem, but it feels different now, not broken, but watched. The stones are rebuilt, the temple stands again, yet there is a stillness that hums beneath every prayer. The streets are swept, but you feel the pressure of eyes. Above the walls, banners wave not of Judah, not of David, but of distant rulers, whose language you do not speak. The exile has ended, but empire has not. First Persia, then Greece, now Rome. The names change, but the shape of power remains. You feel it in the soldiers posted at the gates, in the silver coins bearing foreign faces, in the quiet way people lower their voices when they speak of kings. Home has been returned, but sovereignty has not, and so begins a new chapter, not of exile, but of occupation. This is not the occupation of chains and chariots, but of slow erosion. The temple is respected, even restored, yet tribute flows not to Jerusalem, but to faraway capitals. The high priest still enters the Holy of Holies, but now he is appointed by governors, not God. The Sanhedrin, once a council of wisdom, now walks a narrow path between conviction and survival. You feel their caution, the fear of speaking too strongly, the burden of preserving faith beneath the weight of politics. Still, they endure. The festivals continue. The scrolls are read. Sacrifices rise in smoke. The calendar holds steady. The people, once shattered, have learned to bend. You walk past schools where children chant verses from memory, their voices light but determined. You see scribes with ink-stained hands copying Torah scrolls, their fingers steady, their letters perfect. Faith has become something quiet and precise. In a world of marching boots and imperial statues, resistance takes the form of remembering, of lighting Sabbath candles, of keeping kosher, of telling the story again, not just for tradition, but for survival. These acts are small, but they are anchors. Then come the Greeks with their culture of art, logic, theatre, and conquest. Under Alexander the Great, the world becomes wider, more connected, but also more homogenized. Greek becomes the language of education. Their gods, their games, their philosophies seep into daily life. Many Jews adapt, adopt, even thrive. They speak both Hebrew and Greek. They wear togas. They read Aristotle alongside Moses. But others resist. They see erosion beneath the elegance, faith diluted by fashion. And so tension grows, not only between Jew and Greek, but within the Jewish soul itself. Then, under the Seleucid king Antiochus IV Epiphanes, pressure becomes oppression. The temple is desecrated, its altar defiled with foreign sacrifice. Circumcision is outlawed. Scrolls are burned. Sabbath observance is punished. You feel the grief ripple through the land like a silent scream. And in that silence, something begins to rise. Not grand, not immediate, but fierce. The story of the Maccabees emerges like flame from embers. A priest named Mattathias refuses to bow. His sons take up arms. Among them, Judah Maccabi, whose name will echo in oil lamps and memory. You walk with them through narrow paths and nighttime raids. This is not a mighty army. This is faith with fists. They fight not for conquest, but for sacredness. And after years of struggle, they retake the temple. You stand among the crowds as it is the menorah is lit. There is only enough oil for one night, but it lasts 8. Whether miracle or metaphor, the message glows clear. Light endures. The festival of Hanukkah is born, not just to celebrate victory, but to remember that even in empire, even under threat, the flame of identity can survive. But the struggle is not over. For a time, the Hasmonean dynasty, born from the Maccabees, rules an independent Judea. Yet even in freedom, tension grows. Kings become more like priests. Priests become more like politicians. Factions arise: Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, each holding different visions of what it means to be faithful. Some turn inward, choosing purity and law. Others work within the political structure. Some retreat to the desert, seeking holiness in solitude. And then Rome arrives, slow, steady, certain. You feel its presence before you see its legions. Roads are laid, taxes are counted. Kings are crowned with Roman approval. The client king, Herod the Great, takes the throne, half Jewish, ambitious, ruthless. He rebuilds the temple on a scale not seen since Solomon, turning it into a wonder of the world. You walk through its vast courts, feel the marble under your feet, the cedar overhead, the gold that blinds in sunlight. It is beautiful, and yet it carries an unease. For Herod's loyalty lies not with the people, but with Caesar. Jerusalem now glitters, but trust crumbles. The temple stands tall, but its priests serve powers far beyond the holy city. You hear the voices in the marketplace, quiet, careful, layered with irony. Is this freedom? Is this faith? The people live between loyalty and longing, between appearance and truth. Some whisper of rebellion, others wait for a deliverer. And in the hills of Galilee, the desert of Qumran, and the alleys of Jerusalem, movements begin to stir, not yet visible, not yet named, but present. You sit with a scribe in a hidden cave, as he preserves ancient scrolls. You walk with a mother lighting Sabbath candles in a Roman world. You feel the heartbeat of quiet defiance. This is not the struggle of armies. It is the struggle to remain, to keep memory alive, to carry meaning, not in monuments, but in daily breath. Every word recited, every ritual kept, becomes a way of saying we are still here. And so the chapter closes, not with a battle, not with a triumph, but with tension. A people in their land, yet not free. A temple in its glory, yet overshadowed. An identity both challenged and preserved. And in the hush of night, beneath Roman stars and Jewish prayers, you hear something stir, not empire, but expectation. You are walking toward a moment where history narrows, where the quiet hope of generations presses into a single breath, where prophets, kings, and empires give way to a story told in sandals and silence. You begin this chapter walking barefoot through the hills of Galilee, your steps quiet, your breath slow, the earth warm beneath your soles. The landscape is gentle, not the grandeur of empires, but olive trees, low stone walls, sheep grazing on soft slopes. The towns here are small: Nazareth, Capernaum, Bethsaida, names barely noticed on Roman maps, yet rich with memory. The people live simply, under Roman rule, but within rhythms far older. They plant by the moon, pray toward Jerusalem, teach their children Torah by firelight. The longing for deliverance still hums in the air like a held breath. You feel it in their voices, in their quiet songs, in their watchfulness. The promise of Messiah, a word shaped by centuries, still hangs like dew on the fig leaves. For some, Messiah means warrior, a new David to break chains. For others, a prophet, a teacher, a light in the shadows. The word has no single shape, but infinite hope. And into this stillness, a man steps forward. His name is Yeshua, known to the world as Jesus. He does not come from palace or priesthood. He is not trained in the temple courts or raised in royal halls. He is a carpenter's son, his hands rough with labor, his eyes steady with silence. You walk beside him on dusty roads where he says little but listens well. He speaks in parables, stories of seeds, coins, lamps, and vineyards, not to confuse, but to reveal. His wisdom is not thunderous. It arrives like rain on thirsty ground. Crowds gather not because of spectacle, but because something in his presence reminds them of what they had forgotten, that the sacred is near, and it wears the face of kindness. He heals without charging. He teaches without demanding. He dines with outcasts, touches the unclean, speaks to women, blesses children. He does not abolish the law, but deepens it from surface to soul. You have heard it said, he begins and then turns the world inward, from action to intention, from appearance to truth. You see the scribes grow uneasy, not because he mocks the law, but because he lives it so intimately it exposes their fear. You watch as Pharisees debate him, Sadducees question him, zealots eye him with interest, but he does not join factions. He walks between them all. He enters Jerusalem not on a horse, but on a donkey, not to conquer, but to weep. He speaks of peace, of a kingdom not of this world, and still some expect revolution. The air is tense. The Romans watch closely. You hear the whispers. The priests feel threatened. The balance is delicate, and Jesus disturbs it, not with weapons, but with presence. He enters the temple and turns over tables, not for rebellion, but for cleansing. He does not seek destruction, only honesty, but even that is dangerous. In a world built on fear, you sit beside him in the Garden of Gethsemane as night falls. His prayer is not bold, but human. Let this cup pass from me, he says, yet adds, not my will, but yours. He is not a warrior. He does not run. He is taken, tried, mocked, sentenced. A crown of thorns replaces the imagined crown of gold. The road to Golgotha is quiet. The sky darkens. The crowd is hushed. You walk slowly with the few who remain. His mother, a friend, some women. No swords are drawn. The empire wins again, or so it seems. But the story does not end in silence. For those who followed him, something remains, not proof, but presence. They say he rose, that the tomb was empty, that the breath returned, that in breaking, something eternal began. Whether you believe it as fact or as faith, you feel the shift not in history books, but in hearts. A new kind of community forms not around kingship, but around compassion. These followers of the way, later called Christians, begin not with power, but with meals, with letters, with forgiveness. They are hunted, scattered, jailed, yet they persist. In Rome, in Antioch, in Alexandria, in distant corners of the empire, they carry no weapons, only words. They sing in catacombs. They refuse to bow to emperors. The revolution is not loud. It is made of love, and love is hard to silence. And for the Jewish people who do not follow him, life continues. The temple still stands. The festivals are still kept. The longing for Messiah remains now, with more questions, more divisions, more dreams deferred. Yet their identity endures, because they, too, know how to survive empires. They carry exile in their bones, and still walk with dignity. You realize now that the Messiah was not an answer. He was a mirror, showing what faith can be when stripped of fear, what kingship means when worn with humility, what holiness feels like when it walks beside the poor. Whether he was the promised one or a passing light, his impact is undeniable. He changed the shape of longing, and even as the temple looms above the city, even as priests continue their rituals, something beneath the surface begins to shift. The tension tightens. The Romans grow impatient. Rebellion stirs in the streets. You feel it in the walls, the sense that something is coming, something large, something final. But for now, you sit with the memory of a man who walked gently through history, leaving footprints in dust that will never fully fade. And you wonder, is the center of history a throne or a cross? Is truth in conquest or compassion? You do not need to answer tonight. You only need to rest in the quiet, to let the questions breathe. Outside, the wind brushes the olive trees, and in the stillness, a temple casts its last long shadow. You step into Jerusalem as if stepping into the heartbeat of a storm. The air is thick with tension. Roman banners snap in the wind, their eagle emblems sharp against the sun. In the markets, whispers travel faster than coins. At the temple, crowds swell, some in prayer, others in protest. The long fraying thread between empire and faith is nearing its final tear. You feel it in the stone underfoot, in the uneven rhythm of drums far beyond the hills. The second temple, grand and gold, rebuilt by Herod, still gleams in the daylight, but its beauty cannot mask the fear rising in its shadow. The people are no longer merely restless. They are rising. The Jewish revolt, kindled by heavy taxes, corrupt governance, and wounded pride, has become a wildfire. You walk beside those who march not for conquest, but for dignity. Farmers, scribes, artisans, not warriors, but weary. The zealots call for liberation, the elders urge caution. The priests look to heaven and hesitate. Inside the city, factions clash as much with one another as with Rome. The temple, once a house of unity, becomes a fortress, a battlefield, a final stand, and Rome responds, not with negotiation, but with siege. You see the legions approaching, their discipline as chilling as their silence. They encircled the city. They cut off water, grain, hope. What follows is not war. It is starvation, desperation, the slow collapse of breath. Inside the walls, time loses shape. People barter heirlooms for bread, burn furniture for warmth. The sacred rhythms of sacrifice and psalm falter. You watch a city once filled with prayer now echo with cries. And still the defenders hold, as if the temple itself might save them. But stone cannot stop flame. In 70 CE, the final breach comes. Roman soldiers flood through the gates. They do not spare the sanctuary. The temple is set ablaze. You stand at its threshold as fire climbs the walls, devours the veil, melts the gold. The ark is long gone. The Holy of Holies falls into smoke. The air chokes with ash and memory. You do not look away, because in this moment, something more than architecture is lost. A center, a rhythm, a home. Jerusalem is crushed. The walls are pulled down. Thousands are slain. Survivors are enslaved or scattered. The city becomes a ruin. And you walk through it, barefoot, as if walking through a dream undone. But amid the silence, you notice something strange. In the smoke, in the grief, in the unthinkable, something remains. The Torah, protected in scrolls, still lives. The stories, held in the breath of elders, are still spoken. The covenant is not kept in a building, but in hearts. And slowly, the people begin to carry their sacredness within. You follow them into exile once more, but this time they are not broken. They go not as orphans, but as students. In Yavne, a town by the sea, a council gathers. Rabbis, not priests, now lead. The voice of Rabbi Yohanan ben Zakkai becomes a beacon. Smuggled out of Jerusalem in a coffin to escape the siege, he pleads not for revenge, but for continuity. He asks for a school, a place to teach, a place to remember. And he is granted it. You sit in the cool shadow of its walls, listening as debate replaces sacrifice, as interpretation replaces incense. Judaism begins to transform, not away from its roots, but deeper into them. The temple is gone, but the law remains. The sacred calendar continues. The Sabbath still draws the week into a circle of peace. Across the sea in Rome, you see a triumphal procession. The spoils of Jerusalem are paraded through the streets, the golden menorah, the trumpets, the sacred vessels. The Emperor Titus is crowned with glory, and an arch is built to mark the moment. But you know what the arch cannot show: the silence that followed, the prayers whispered in hidden corners, the resilience born not from victory, but from loss. And that resilience spreads. Jewish communities across the Mediterranean begin to bloom, not in temples, but in homes, in study halls, in song. Synagogues rise from clay and timber, not to replace the temple, but to carry its flame. You walk through these places, humble and radiant, and feel something powerful. The center has moved from place to people, from ritual to remembrance, from altar to idea, and yet pain still follows. In 132 CE, another revolt, Bar Kokhba, erupts, a brief spark of sovereignty, a declaration of hope. But Rome, ruthless and vast, extinguishes it with crushing force. Jerusalem is renamed Alea Capitolina, a Roman colony. Jews are banned from its gates. The Temple Mount is leveled. Statues of Jupiter rise where the ark once stood. And yet still, the people do not vanish. They gather, they write, they dream. The Mishnah is compiled, a collection of law, of memory, of wisdom. It does not shout. It speaks with the calm of survival. You walk with the generations that follow. Through Persia, through Spain, through North Africa and Gaul. Each place adds something. Each exile shapes the melody. And though the geography shifts, the memory does not. Every Passover ends with the same soft sentence. Next year in Jerusalem, not as a slogan, but as a song, a compass, a promise that does not demand fulfillment. To remain true. You sit by a window in a distant land. A mother lights Sabbath candles. A child asks questions. A grandfather chants verses by heart. The temple is gone, yes. But in this moment, in this breath, you feel it. The sacred has survived, because when the center falls, it does not vanish. It travels. It settles into language, into rhythm, into the ordinary. And now, wherever a story is told, wherever a prayer is whispered, wherever someone says, remember, there, Jerusalem breathes again. The city is not forgotten. It is carried, and you carry it now. But beyond this stillness, history waits, still turning, still unfolding, still circling toward a future not yet seen. You begin this chapter not in Jerusalem, but far away in the soft candlelight of a room on a quiet street in Cordoba, in Fez, in Vilnius, in Baghdad, in Brooklyn. The year is no longer marked by kings, but by centuries, and still, the flame is lit. You sit by a table where bread is blessed and wine is poured, and the words spoken are old, older than the language around them. They do not belong to this city, yet they echo through it like roots beneath cobblestone. This is the diaspora, the long journey after dispersion, where the Jewish people scatter like seeds and still remember how to bloom. You follow them across time and space, not as wanderers, but as carriers of memory. After the temple's fall, exile became not a moment, but a movement. And yet, the soul of the people remained intact, because it was no longer held in walls of stone, but in words, in customs, in the rhythm of the week. You walk through Babylon, where scholars study by oil lamp and the Talmud takes shape, vast, layered, full of questions, a conversation stretched across generations. You feel the pulse of resilience in every page. To ask is to live, to remember is to remain. Then through Persia and Yemen, where poems are written in exile's voice, not bitter, but aching and rich. You cross into Europe, through medieval France, Italy, the Rhineland, sometimes welcomed, often watched, always adapting. The synagogue becomes not just a house of prayer, but of gathering, of identity. Jews become merchants, doctors, astronomers, poets. They speak Hebrew in prayer, Arabic in philosophy, Ladino in song, Yiddish in lullabies. In Spain, under Muslim and then Christian rule, they thrive for a time until the shadows grow. You hear the decrees, the expulsion orders, the questions, twisted into accusations, and yet they do not vanish. They pack their scrolls, their recipes, their memories, and they go, again, to the Ottoman Empire, to North Africa, to Eastern Europe, to new beginnings always laced with old endings. You walk now through the shtetls of Poland and Lithuania, where snow whispers along rooftops and children learn Torah in smoky rooms. Life is hard, but faith is woven into every day. Sabbath arrives like music in winter. Weddings dance under canopies of hope. Holidays become lifelines. Purim for laughter, Passover for freedom, Yom Kippur for return. You walk through centuries of survival. Pogroms rise like storms. Ghettos are built like cages. And still the candles are lit. Still the songs are sung. You stand in Prague, in Salonika, in Alexandria, in Berlin. Empires rise and fall, but the diaspora holds. It does not shout its survival. It whispers it through. Story, through ritual, through the soft insistence of continuity. Then come the darkest nights. You find yourself in a cattle car rattling toward Auschwitz. The silence here is heavy. History fractures. The world looks away. 6 million voices are silenced, and yet somehow not erased. In the camps, Prayer is whispered with cracked lips. A crust of bread is shared like communion. Hope becomes resistance. You walk among the ashes, and you ask, how does faith survive this? And still, somewhere in that silence, a voice answers, not loudly, but with the strength of survival itself. Yisrael, Chai. The people of Israel live. And then a return. Not of all, not to the past, but to a place. In 1948, after centuries of longing, the state of Israel is declared. The land that has lived in prayer now breathes again in law, in citizenship, in breath. But return is never simple. Nations clash, borders bleed. The dream of home comes with cost. And yet, for many, it becomes a kind of exhale. You walk the streets of Tel Aviv, the hills of the Galilee, the winding stones of Jerusalem reborn. Hebrew, once only a sacred tongue, now orders coffee, reads newspapers, sings lullabies, and still the diaspora continues. The Jewish story is no longer bound to one geography. It stretches across oceans, to America, to Argentina, to Australia, wherever memory is kept alive with care. And you realize now, exile did not scatter the people, it expanded them, gave them many voices, many colors, many ways to remain. 1. You stand on a quiet hill and watch the sun set over a modern city built upon ancient dreams. The path here was not straight. It curved through suffering, through wisdom, through endless acts of remembering. And though not every prayer has been answered, not every question resolved, still the story continues. The long road home is not just a line on a map. It is the strength to carry your center with you, to plant where you land, to bend and not break, to light a candle in a place that once held darkness, to speak a name into the quiet and know it still matters. And so you rest now at the edge of history, not at its end, but in its breath. The wind shifts, the stars appear, the same stars Abraham once saw, scattered and brilliant. You close your eyes and feel not closure, but continuation. The journey is never over, and that, perhaps, is the most sacred part. The story sleeps now, but it does not end.